Merhaba arkadaşlar. This is the first recitation for Principles of Economics course. We will do these recitations for every chapter and hopefully it will continue throughout the semester. And I will start with the chapter 2 and I uploaded some questions about this, 3 questions, and we will solve this. But before I solve them, I will briefly talk about the subjects that you have come about in the chapter 2, which are budget constraint, opportunity cost, law of diminishing marginal utility, and PPF. And I assume that you already read the book and the slides, so I will just go over them really quick, and if you have any questions about them after you read the book and watch this video, you can email me. So let's start with the budget constraint. To understand this budget constraint, an example will be helpful. Let's suppose that the economy only consists 2 goods, which is bread and tea. And let us suppose that your monthly income is 20 liras and price of bread is, let's say, 2 liras and price of tea is 1 lira. The question is, how would we graph this budget constraint? First, let us graph a 2-dimensional graph, since there's only 2 goods. And you can put any good on any axis, it's up to you. But for this question, let me put tea on the x-axis and bread on the y-axis. And remember that these represent the quantities, not the price. So this means quantity of tea and the quantity of bread. To find the intercepts, use this strategy. Think if you only use your income on tea, how much tea you could buy. If you use 20 liras on tea, you could buy 20 units of tea. Put this on the graph. And again, think if you use your income only on bread, how many bread you could buy? You could buy 10 units of bread. And since the slope of the budget constraint is constant, you can connect the dots to obtain budget constraint. This is your budget constraint, and this budget constraint shows all the allocations that you can buy with your monthly income. So you can buy all allocations in this area and on this curve. You can buy on this dot, or on this dot an allocation. But remember, if you buy any allocations inside the curve, inside this area, that means you're not using all of your income, you're saving some. And if you use your all income on these goods in bread or tea, you should get an allocation on the budget constraint as this like this allocation. So this is the graphing of budget constraint. It's really straightforward, and we will also find the slope and the equation in the examples. Now let's go to opportunity cost. And let's continue understanding opportunity cost on this example. If I say you, what is the opportunity cost of getting 1 bread in terms of tea, what would you say? So I'm asking, what is the opportunity cost of 1 bread? It's essentially saying how much tea you should give up in order to obtain 1 unit of bread. Let's see it on the graph. If I have 0 bread and I want to have 1 bread, I'm going from this point to this point. If I want to have one bread, I'm using 2 T as of my income, so I have only 18 now, and I can buy 18 units of tea. So I can only buy 18 units of tea. So see what happens here. As I go from 0 to 1 bread, I am giving up 2 units of tea. I gave up 2 units of tea. So the opportunity cost of getting 1 bread is 2 teas. This is my cost. And again, you can ask, what is the opportunity cost of 1 tea? And this is the inverse of this logically, 1 over 2 bread. This is the opportunity cost of an good in terms of other goods, and you can express your opportunity cost in terms of price or other things. Okay, this was the opportunity cost, and let's now look at the law of diminishing marginal utility. I wrote some allocations that we can buy from this example in a graph. So we could buy, remember, 20 units of tea and 0 bread. If I buy 1 bread, I could only buy 18 tea, and so on, so on. So the marginal utility means the satisfaction you get from a specific extra one good. So let's start from this point. Let's suppose that we are on this allocation. So we have 20 units of tea and 0 bread. If I get 1 bread, my marginal utility would be high, because in this allocation I was only consuming tea, and logically I would be sick of tea because there are a lot of tea, no bread. So if someone gives me bread, or I trade in the market to get bread, my utility from getting that bread, this extra 1 bread, would be high because my quantity of bread is low. So the law here is that as the quantity rises, marginal utility decreases. As the quantity decreases, marginal utility of getting that item increases. Think about your belongings. If you have so much of an item, your marginal utility would be low. You wouldn't get satisfaction from that item if that item is so much. So in this case, in this allocation, marginal utility of tea is low, and marginal utility of bread is high, since bread is low in quantity and tea is high in quantity. So this was the law of diminishing marginal utility. Now we turn to the PPF, which is production possibilities frontier. And remember, it's about production, not consumption. We buy goods here. We buy goods in budget constraint. So don't confuse PPF with budget constraint. PPF is another thing. PPF is about producing, not buying. So it's about production. To think about production level, think of a country. Think of Turkey can only produce 2 goods. Turkey's economy is only consists of 2 goods, tea and orange. So there are different allocations that Turkey can produce. In questions, you would be giving this table, and you could be asked to graph a PPF. To graph it, don't graph like you did in budget constraint. In budget constraint, we just found the intercepts and connected the dots because the slope was constant. But in this case, slope changes, as we will see. So you have to find more than 2 dots. I found here 4 dots and connected them. As you can see, there are different allocations on this table. I found allocations and put the dots on this table and connected them. As you can see, the slope is not constant. It's a belly shaped, and the slope changes along the curve. So this is called the production possibilities frontier, and it shows different allocations of a country's production possibilities. So why the slope changes, you can ask. It's because the opportunity cost of producing one item increases. So we can see it from here mathematically. If we want to produce first 10 units of tea from 0 to 10, we must give up 2 units of orange. So the opportunity cost of first 10 units of tea is 2 oranges. And if we want to go from 10 to 20, we have to give up 3 units of orange. So the opportunity cost of producing 10 more tea is 3. As you can see, it increases. And if we want to go from 30 to 40, we must give up 8 units of orange. As you can see, the opportunity cost rises as we produce more of a good. To understand this better, I have an example that I think that would help you understand this concept better. So think of this example. You are the president of Turkey and you can only plant 2 goods, oranges and tea. And also suppose that at the initial point, all of Turkey's land is planted with orange, even the Black Sea region. First thing you would do is to remove the orange farms in the Black Sea region to plant teas, logically. The opportunity cost of these teas would be low, since it would be so efficient to produce tea in the Black Sea region than for farming oranges. So opportunity cost of a good will have a relatively low opportunity cost at the beginning. Now suppose that you planted tea in all of Black Sea region. To increase tea production, you must plant tea outside the Black Sea. And as you can guess, opportunity cost will increase since the land would be less efficient than Black Sea for tea production. As you can see from this example, opportunity cost rises as we produce more of a specific good. That's why the slope is not constant in the PPF. You can understand this concept better as we go through questions of PPF. So the most important thing about PPF is the increasing opportunity cost and the change in the slope. Okay, let's start with the first question in the problem set. In the first question, it says, there are 2 goods in the economy, good 1 and good 2, and the price of good 1 is 10 liras and price of good 2 is 20 liras, and our income is 200 liras. Determine the budget constraint, slope, and the equation of the budget constraint. I use the same strategy as I have used before and graph a 2-dimensional graph. First, we have to determine the intercepts. To find the intercepts, let us suppose that we buy good 1 with all of our income. If we use our income only on the good 1, we can buy 20 units of good 1. 20 units of good 1. Let me write it again. Good 1. And we can buy 20 units of good 1. And if we suppose that we use our income only on the good 2, we can buy only 10 units of good 2. And if we connect these dots, remember the slope is always constant in the budget constraint, so we can connect the intercepts to find the budget constraint. This is our budget constraint. To find the slope, we can use basic mathematics and find the tangent of the curve. If we find the tangent, the slope is equals to -1/2. This is our slope. We found the slope, we found the budget constraint, only left is the equation of this budget constraint. To find the equation, let me take a point here and again use the basic mathematics. To find the equation, we use this formula, and I labeled good 1 as x and I labeled good 2 as y, and you can put different labels to different goods, and I put y to good 2 and I put x to good 1. And here's our equation, and if we make it look more good, this becomes the equation of our budget constraint. This is the equation, this is the slope, and this is the budget constraint. That was the answer of the first problem. And in the second part, it says assume that the M increases, M is our income increases to 300 liras and price of first good becomes 20 liras. Determine the new budget constraint and the equation. Let me graph that again. And let's put good 1 here, good 2 here. And let's use our strategy and assume that we use our income only on good 1. If we do that, we can buy 15 units of good 1 because the price of good 1 is now 20 liras. And if we assume that we use our income only on good 2, we can again buy 15 units of good 2 because price of good 2 is 20 liras. And if we connect these dots, we again find our budget constraint. Let's find the slope to find the equation. Slope is, as you can see, tangent, and from this we get slope -1. And if we use the formula for finding the equation of the budget constraint, we take a point here, again at the intercept, and we use the formula to find the equation of this budget constraint. And from this equation we get this. And remember that y is the quantity of good 2 and x is the quantity of good 1. This was the equation of the this budget constraint, and slope is -1, as you can see. And the slope doesn't change in the budget constraint. And we can also mix these two curves into one curve. And let's put this curve inside this curve. In this curve, we could only buy 10 units of good 2 and 20 units of good 1. So this was the initial budget constraint, and this is the budget constraint after these changes. Let's continue with our second question in the problem set. In this question it says a farm produces only 2 goods. The essential word here is producing, so it's not a budget constraint. A farm produces only 2 goods, tea and grape. Table shows the maximum output combinations using all available resources and technology. So we see here different combinations of tea and grape that we can produce. It says graph the production possibilities curve and put tea on the horizontal axis. Again, we graph a two-dimensional graph because there are only 2 goods. So let's graph it like that and put tea here and grape here. Let's find different points and connect these dots to obtain our production possibilities frontier. If we start with combination A, it says it can produce 70 units of tea and 0 units of grape. And if we find this H, it says we produce 0 tea and 65 units of grape. And let's find different points because it's not a budget constraint and its slope is not constant always, so we cannot just connect these points. We must find different points so we can grasp the PPF, shape of the PPF. Another point we can choose D. It says it have 40 units of tea and 48 units of grape. So there is another point. Let's find another point. Let's find F. It says this. Okay. And let's find C. It says this. Now we can connect these dots because we can now see the shape of the curve. It is again a belly-shaped curve. Its slope is not constant because the opportunity cost changes along the curve. This is the production possibilities frontier. And this was basically it. We cannot ask for slope because, as I said, the slope changes along the curve because the opportunity cost rises. In the second part, it says suppose we are producing at point D, so we are producing 40 units of tea and 48 units of grape. What is the opportunity cost of producing an additional 8,000 of pounds of grapes? And again, this is labeled as thousands of pounds grapes. So it says, what is the opportunity cost of producing an additional 8,000 pounds of grapes? We were at this allocation and we want to increase grape by 8. And as you can see, we must go from D to E to realize this goal. We produced 8 more units of grape. So it says to produce 8 more units of grape, how much tea you should give up? We should give up 10 units of tea to produce 8 units of grape. So the opportunity cost is 10 teas. This is the opportunity cost of producing more 8,000 of pounds of grapes. So in the third part of question, it says, suppose we are at point G, and we can see in here, suppose we are at the point G, what happens to the opportunity cost of producing more tea? We are at the point G and it's asking us what happens if we produce more and more tea. If we want to produce 10 more units of tea in G, we should give up 3 grapes. So opportunity cost of producing 10 to 20 is 3 units of grape. And if we want to go from 20 to 30, if we want to go from there to there, we should give up 4 units of grapes. And if again we want to go from 30 to 40, we should give up 6 units of grapes. And as you can see, the opportunity cost of producing tea becomes more and more as we go along the curve. I explained this on the first part before going on to questions. As you produce more of an item, its opportunity cost will rise, as you can see here. Opportunity cost of producing tea rises. What happens? It increases. Suppose that the weather changed dramatically and it became not suitable for tea. What would happen to production possibilities frontier? Again, we can graph it on here. So it says us that we cannot produce tea as efficiently as before. So production of tea would be lower than before. So if we could produce 70 units of tea, let's suppose we now only can produce 50 units of tea with all of our resources. And what about grape? Grape doesn't change. We can produce grape as before, so grape's initial point doesn't change. And again, the slope of the curve doesn't change, so it's again a belly shaped, and we can connect the dots of here with the same slope as before. So this is the new PPF after the weather change. Okay, in the last question, we are given a country's production possibilities frontier. Actually, we are given different PPS of a country. In the first part, we are asked to find the reason why a movement from X to Y can occur. X to Y, as you can see, there is an increase in production capacity in both industries, both in plastic industry and both in food industry, since we can produce more with given resources. As you can see, we can produce more quantities, more units of products than before. So an explanation could be a technological development in both industries, or an influx of immigrants into the country, because immigrants tend to lower the minimum wage, and that would lower the cost of resources, and that would boost the production. So this could be an explanation. An important point to notice here that the increase in production capacity happened in both industries. In the second part, we are asked to find why a movement from Y to Z could occur. From Y to Z, we again realize an increase in production capacity, but only in the plastic industry. As you can see, there is an increase in plastic production capacity, but there is no increase in the food industry. So it's a special case for plastic industry, and an explanation could be a technological development only in the plastic industry. In the third part, it says consider following events: an increase in the unemployment rate, a decrease in nation's money supply, a war that kills a lot of people. Which events could explain a movement from Y to W? I misspelled the words here, I'm sorry. So it says what are the reasons could be for movement from Y to W. From going Y to W, we realize a decrease in the production capacity of country. So let's go one by one. An increase in the unemployment rate, that doesn't explain decrease in the production capacity. A decrease in nation's money supply, well, that is unrelated to this topic. A war that kills a lot of people. Yes, that is the reason, because if your working people are dying, you cannot produce more items as before. If there is a war that kills a lot of people, then your production capacity will tend to decrease. So this was the end of the recitation. Arkadaşlar, eğer önerileriniz varsa gelecek haftalarda şöyle yapalım diye, onları söyleyebilirsiniz, mail atabilirsiniz. Ben ikinci section asistanıyım. Bana veya arkadaşlarıma mail atabilirsiniz, diğer asistanlara. Ona göre bir planlama yapıp recitation'ları sizin için daha iyi bir hale getirebiliriz.